Hey everybody, and welcome to She's in Business Live. I'm so excited today because we've got an actual fun interview. They're always fun, but this one is actually about fun and how to follow the fun for business owners and kind of get out of that rut. I know as a longtime business owner in a couple different sectors, I know how sometimes the zhuzh of life can get sucked out of you when you're worried about all the things and you're wearing all the hats. And so today we're bringing on Audra King, who's going to tell us more about how to actually follow that fun, how to get that life back in your business ownership. So I want to tell you a little bit about Audra before we bring her on. She's a lifelong creative who's obsessed with making business building easy and accessible. She's built a business by constantly asking herself and her clients, how can we make this feel fully aligned and fun? Audra works with healers, creatives, and service providers who aren't afraid to do things a little differently and who embrace that life as a creative is rarely conventional. Her driving beliefs are when women create wealth, we make the world a better place, and to always follow the fun. So we'll roll that intro and we'll bring Audra back on right after this. Hey Audra,
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so pumped about this interview because I talked to a lot of business owners, I talked to a lot of coaches, consultants, kind of experts, and I very rarely hear anybody mention the word fun. So
Right?
how did this come about as your focus? I have to hear this whole story.
Yeah. So it really started about 10 years ago. So I've been a lifelong entrepreneur. I was selling, handmade cards to my parents' friends when I was 7. And my first career was as a teacher, but along the way, I was still, dabbling in entrepreneurship on the side. And about 10 years ago, my husband and I realized that we had really gotten really far on the path to financial independence. And so we were able to switch gears. And so we both became entrepreneurs, and all of the great stuff that entails, like having your own schedule, getting more freedom and autonomy, but also all of the other stuff that being an entrepreneur entails, which is I have to make all the decisions. I have to be responsible for my schedule in a way that we really aren't when we're in more traditional employment. And so a couple of years ago, I took a step back and I realized, this isn't really feeling as fun as I had hoped it would be. I think a lot of people, when they become entrepreneurs, they are really excited about some of those opportunities. But then when you're faced with having to be intentional and take action to make a follow the fun lifestyle possible, we don't always know how to do that. And like you said, it's not really part of the conversation. We hear a lot more about hustling and pushing and those types of things. So I took a step back and thought, this isn't feeling so fun anymore. I intentionally, created this opportunity for myself to be able to go into business. I really want this to be what I was hoping for. And I really like to experiment with other people. Like if I bring people along when I'm interested in something, I'm much more likely to follow through with it. And so I got a little mastermind together and I was like, let's have this mastermind focus on following the fun and just see where that takes us. And it really opened the door for what I talk about now, which is how do we look at our lives and our businesses holistically and then take action on the areas that maybe aren't quite so fun, because I think it's possible to have a business that lights you up and that isn't your whole life.
Right. I
Yeah.
think that is especially for the online entrepreneurial space, that hustle, that grind, that like you got to eat the frog, you've got to like basically you've got to kind of be miserable. Eventually, you'll get to the fun. Eventually, you'll
Yeah.
live this life that you wanted to or that you dreamed of. But you got to put in, you got to put in the tough times. You got to pay your dues to get to that next step. How much of
Hmm.
that is true? What's like when you're talking to people about following the fun? Like, what's the expectation for a business owner who's in the trenches? Like, how much should be fun? How much like what should they really expect reasonably, or what should they be shooting for?
Yeah, I love that question. And I think it's when I say follow the fun is one of my driving beliefs, sometimes people are like, "Oh, so your life is always fun, it's always easy and perfect." And I'm like, "No, no, no, no." There are always challenges, and there are cycles in life and in business, and some cycles, are more challenging than others. I think the follow the fun piece, though, is making it a choice. If we are in a time in our business where maybe we want a schedule. One of the things I talk a lot about is schedule. And maybe we have a vision for how we want to schedule our time. So, for example, in my business, the last week of the month, I block off from any client work, any calls. And I use that time either to travel because I wanted to have a block of time where if I had an opportunity to travel, I could just take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Or I use it for like internal creative projects in my business. But I didn't snap my fingers and all of a sudden I had a schedule like that, right? I had to, when I work with coaching clients, they know before they start working with me that the last week of the month I'll be answering emails, but we're not going to have calls that week. And I had to also set my own internal boundaries around that because it's very easy to want to say yes to things. Opportunities sometimes come along during that last week of the month. And, I also think there's a lot of value and understanding why you want to, for example, have that week off. So if I'm not traveling and I have an opportunity that I just can't pass up on, I'll still do it that week, but I know that there is space in my calendar on a regular basis. And so I think when it comes to that hustle mentality, it's like there's never a conversation around when does the hustle stop. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it stretches in front of us. And I think that's why people get discouraged and they ultimately sometimes abandon a business that could have been very successful because they don't understand this is a long game.
Right.
You can't just keep on pushing yourself without taking a step back and saying, how is this sustainable? How do I make this part of my lifestyle?
Yeah, they expect this sprint, and then they
Hmm.
expect this like winning moment at the end of the sprint, and then they realize, oh, I got to do this for another 20 years. Like,
Right.
I mean, or another 5 or 10 years if I want to sell it or whatever it is. But yeah, you can't. It's no like all of a sudden one day. It's just all of the work is gone and all the responsibilities are gone. You have to organize your life around it and make it more of a lifestyle that's sustainable. Especially
Hmm.
if you've got family, you've got responsibilities, you've got lots of different things to juggle. And what I liked, I was snooping on you a little bit earlier, and you talk a lot about kind of these key areas of happiness and. I'd love to hear more about that because I know as a business owner, sometimes I feel like um, my version of happy is a little bit different than my friends who are in traditional jobs or who have just kind of different lifestyles than me. So I'm interested to hear from your perspective what those key areas are.
Yeah. So every month I run a Follow the Fun workshop, and it's a recurring workshop, but it has different topics and guests that I bring on. But at the beginning of every workshop, we take a look at my funometer,
Oh,
which
I
is a
love
very
it.
cheesy name, but it's a powerful tool. And there's 6 areas on there. If you want, I can throw up a visual, or I can also just talk you through what they are. But it's
Here, yeah,
basically
let's.
when I
Is that on your
you want to take
slides?
a look.
Yeah, yeah. Let's go over to
Yeah,
that.
let me pull up the slide and then I'll
Okay,
let you know when that's ready to
great.
go.
I love a good visual. So
Yeah, me too. You know, as a classroom teacher, I realized just how important sometimes being able to see what we're talking about
hmm
is for people.
it's true.
All right, it's ready to go.
Okay, let me pop over there. Let's.
And I can't see the share screen, so just let me know when you want me to start talking about it.
Audra, you can go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, so this is the phonometer. This is when I assess kind of how things are in my life, or I talk to my clients, people who come to my workshops. We take a moment every month to pause and just check in. And so the idea is the closer you are to the center of the circle, the less satisfied you are with that particular area in your life and business. And if you're all the way out to the edge, you're like, this is amazing. This is exactly what I want. And so I think the most important piece of this is just that regular checking in, because I think we get so, on the routine treadmill where we're not really taking that step back. And often where people start to make changes is in that first area, schedule, because they realize that the schedule is under their control. And so, a question I like to pose is, how is your schedule working for you? And is it how you want to be spending your days? There's a quote, and I don't know who it's from, but it really has stuck with me. And it's basically, how you spend your days is how you spend your life. And when I started to think about that, I was like, wow, to speak to your earlier point, we keep thinking like someday we'll get off of the hustle treadmill. Someday I'll get this thing that I want. So I'm just going to keep on putting in the time and effort. But then you look back and realize, well, that's how I spent my whole year. So I'm a big proponent of like creating the life that you want now, as opposed to like someday. And maybe that means we don't always hit the milestones as quickly, but I feel like it's a lot more enjoyable along the way. So I think schedule is something where we can start to take little steps. And like I mentioned, I block off a whole week in my schedule, but it can start with just an hour or a day to do something that feels more aligned than how your schedule is now. So yeah, Kate, I would love to hear how your schedule feels for you, if you're willing to share. Like, do you feel like you found balance, or is that something that you might want to work on?
Yeah, I think let me make sure I'm not okay. Yeah, I have not found that balance yet.
Mhm.
I feel like I had found it a while ago when we were doing kind of a different iteration of our offers, and then we have expanded this She's in Business platform, and so it's been
Mhm.
pretty hectic. But there's so many aspects of it that I have fun actually doing that it makes it okay, where I know the balance is going to come slowly, and I do try to set up my life around slowly building those kind of opportunities for fun and freedom in, and just knowing
Mhm.
that it's coming, but I've got to work towards it. Is kind of
Yeah.
where I feel like I'm at, and some months are not at all balanced, and then some months are better. My ultimate goal is for summers, we used to travel. We got an RV and we used to travel in the summers, and I'd work, on the road, but you can't do quite as much work when you're when you're on the road. My
Right.
my goal would be to go back and do that again, and be in a place where I can just kind of like part time it, during the
Yeah.
summer, and then really, really push during winter when I'm locked in, when I'm locked in the
I love
house.
I I love that you bring that up, because I think, it's oftentimes people will look at their schedule in terms of like a week at a time. And I think that makes sense. But also, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who, like you, they like to have a busier season, and then they like to have a season to rest.
Yeah.
And I think that's a piece that the traditional model of employment doesn't really allow for generally. You go in every day at the same amount of time a day. And as entrepreneurs, we have that flexibility. to say like, this is how I prefer to work. And so while it might feel to somebody on the outside like, oh, that's out of balance, it sounds to me like your ultimate vision is to have your own version of balance. And that's really what following the fun is about. We don't have to subscribe to the model that is around us. We can create our own model.
Well, I love that. So now I don't feel as, because I really, I like to like, when we have like a busy cycle and I'm like working 12, 14 hours, I like to do that when I know that it's not like I have to do that that I have it,
Yeah.
okay, well, like next month, I don't have to do, I
Right.
like that. I like that hustle when it's short,
Yes.
when
Yeah.
it's focused.
It's the sprint mentality, but knowing that there's like an end to it, and then
Yeah.
there's going to be a period of rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so another area I like to look at is our circle and our clients.
Hmm.
Specifically in business, often our circle is, our peers in business.
Hmm.
So I'm part of a mastermind that's been meeting for 3 years now, and at this point we have a texting thread. We're in each other's all aspects of each other's lives because we've just gotten so close. And I know for a fact that I wouldn't be where I am at now in my business if I hadn't surrounded myself with those people.
Yeah.
And I also am very intentional about the clients that I work with because if I'm going to be spending that time working with people and being in company with people, I want them to be people that are, supporting me, that I feel good after I spend time with them, that feel aligned to my values and beliefs. And so sometimes people, when they look at the funometer, they're like, oh, actually, I don't have that circle of peer support, or I'm not working with the clients that I want to be working with. If I tweaked that a little bit, I'd probably enjoy my business a lot more. And I want to circle back and say, like, the funometer isn't an invitation to beat ourselves up. Like it's an invitation for reflection to say, like, oh, these are the tweaks I could make because, not everybody reflects on these things. I think this is really true leadership to take a step back and say, like, how is this working for me? How is this working for my clients and my business? And knowing that nobody's funometer is like filled out to the edge in all of the areas. Like my funometer is not a perfect circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Um, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so is that what, because I know you talk about having kind of like a holistic approach to your lifestyle, to your business. Is that what you mean is like trying to get more where it's more of a circle? Or when you talk about holistically, living holistically in that way, what are you guiding your clients towards?
Yeah. So it is taking a look at these areas and saying, like, um, where am I meeting my vision for what this could be, and where am I still needing to work on that? It's also like realizing that we are whole human beings. We're not just business owners. We're
Hmm.
not just partners. We're not just members of our society. We are whole people. And so, making sure that the business fits into our life and not that we're trying to force our life to fit our business needs.
Hmm.
I really like the analogy that our businesses can be either the hungry, demanding monster that's constantly, like making us feel on edge and that we're not doing enough, that we're not maybe giving enough, or it can be this benevolent, cuddly monster that still takes some of our time and attention, but feels like it's giving back to us as well. And I was at a stage in my business when I first started exploring this where I felt like I had the hungry monster that I could never satisfy of a
Hmm.
business. And now I'm much closer to, my little business monster is cuddly and fluffy and friendly, and I feel that the business gives to me. I'm not just constantly giving to the business.
And how do you
Yeah.
tell so if you're more towards the cuddly end now,
Hmm.
I feel like it's like I don't know if I'm dating myself, but like gremlins. Like They can
Hmm.
switch back and forth at any time, depending on what, it
Yeah.
could go where they're like crazy gremlin, it could go cuddly gremlin. How can you start to identify, how have you found a good way to identify, like, okay, we're going to like scary, really, awful monster here, or, he's morphing into something else.
Hmm.
And how do you get it back? How do you get it, how do you shift the focus back?
Yeah, I love that question. So I think it's awareness, and it's also I like to. I'm really interested in body somatics, and I like to like check in with my body and see like, am I feeling, the signs in my body that I'm taking on too much. So sometimes that's like, tightness in my chest, or I'm feeling like I'm going and going and going, and I can't get to where I want to go, even though I'm at like 100 miles an hour. I once had a coach ask, like, how do you know if you've taken on too much? And for me, the answer is if everything feels urgent.
Mm,
Um, and so, like, I need space to be at my best, to process, to be creative, to show up for my clients. And so, when I don't have that space and everything starts to feel like it needs to happen right now, that's for me when the monster rears its ugly side.
mm-hmm.
And I think then it's really about setting boundaries. And it can be really hard to do that when we're having to set our own boundaries as opposed to like external boundaries that might have been imposed on us before. I don't think we all have had the opportunity to like flex those internal boundary muscles. But it can often mean like saying no to things, or I like the 4 Ds, which is delete, delegate, defer, and there's another one that I never remember.
I know what you're talking about though, but of course
Yeah.
now yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, like, just going through and saying, okay, am I spending, like, is this time necessary? Or could I change something so that I'm not, in this state of constant urgency? Because that's not how I want to live my life or run my business.
Right. Well, and I think, you had pointed out earlier that li- time management, energy management, just general management of ourselves, self management
Hmm.
as an entrepreneur is completely different for most of us than it was when we were doing corporate or we were doing whatever we were doing before.
Yeah.
And you think, well, I was so successful in this area, or I really I did a really good job in this area, and then when I go off out on my own, I'm going to be able to manage it so much better because there's nobody over me telling me how to manage it, and that actually becomes kind of the trap where you have to learn an entirely different way of managing your energy, managing your emotions, and managing your
Hmm.
emotional energy, your physical, all of this. It's like you're starting over.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I really figured it out when I was working a regular job. And then when I went on my own, I mean, it's still just I'm constantly trying to practice figuring out how to gauge how I'm feeling, how much I'm taking on. Am I doing the right things, the right activities in my business to move it forward and not drain myself? And that can be
Hmm.
really tough for people when they don't know that that's kind of normal. Or I mean, that's part of the process rather than,
Yeah.
it's just something that you have to learn. And it changes over time too as your life changes. you
And I
know?
think it's a permission piece. And
Mm.
also, like, as business owners, we hear a lot of shoulds,
Mm-hmm.
especially around things like marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you should be posting reels on Instagram. You should be, doing a podcast, all of these things. And it can feel like we have to do those things to be successful because we see people who do those things who are successful, and like that's the model that we take.
Mm-hmm.
But I think believing that it is possible for this to be fun for me, and it's just like understanding that it's a process of trying things and figuring out like what does that fun marketing plan look like, what are the offers and products that I light me up to, and I could sell them all day long because I believe in them so strongly. I'm sure that was part of the process for you with developing your software system, was like figuring out what is it that I'm so passionate about that I could, promote this for the next decade and feel like, yeah, this is what I want to be talking about.
Right.
Is that the case for you?
Yeah, yeah. Anything that lights me up, I try to follow, and
Hmm.
so I can talk about lots of things, but it doesn't necessarily light me up. Like even in this conversation, just talking about business ownership and entrepreneurship and finding this balance and seeking this like life and business that we're wanting. To me, that even that conversation lights me up, and I think that over time you start to see it more, you start to identify it more, because there's always stuff in your business that you're gonna have to do. Nobody likes bookkeeping. Nobody, I mean,
Right.
maybe they do. They shouldn't say that. I have plenty of bookkeeping friends. But like, there's always these things in your business. It's like the 80-20 rule, right? Like 20% of it, you're just probably gonna, you just got it, unless you can eventually outsource it. Like it just kind of
Hmm.
sucks for a while. But I always feel like 80% of my life should be, or my business should be, stuff that I'm passionate about, or I'm good at, or I know how to do, or I feel like I'm in my zone of genius. Otherwise, to me, then I don't feel like I feel like it's a big monster instead of the cuddly monster if I don't have
Right.
that balance.
Yeah, and I see so many people who come to me and they're like, "This is what I'm doing in my business," and I'm like, "Great, do you love it?" And they're like, "No, but nobody's gonna buy the thing that I really love to talk about or the thing that I do." And I think that's crazy because
Yeah.
there's goat yoga in the world, and
Yes.
right,
I love
like,
to go through like niche Facebook groups, like so niche, like 200,000 people in this like miniature dog. Like I just like to go find these weird things, and I'm like, listen, there are
right,
200,000 people in this group of the craziest thing you could ever think of. I'm sure that
exactly.
you can find 10 or 20 clients this year for your one-on-one
Hmm.
consulting services. You're going to be good. It's just having, and I think once you get more of those people talking about what lights you up, and you're like, oh,
Hmm.
I can't, there are people who want this, then it becomes much more reassuring that like, oh, like I can do this, I can talk about what I love, I can get
Yeah.
paid well to do it, and then it becomes, but it's getting to that point that I think people, like you said earlier, they stop before they're really at a point where they can see the success.
Yeah. And what I love about what you do, Kate, is you build off of what people, their experience and what they already know to help them grow their businesses and really focus in on that. And I think sometimes we discount what we know.
Yes.
I know when I was a teacher, I decided to leave full time teaching. Like I mentioned, we were close to financial independence, so we had some money to play with in terms of not having to be employed for a year or two. And I was like, okay, gosh, I guess I just need to do something related to education.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did some graphic design for course creators and helped make their workbooks and stuff like that because as a teacher, I did that all the time. And then it was a process of realizing, oh, actually, my ability to see the big picture and break it down into pieces that are actionable. Oh, the learning aesthetic and like bringing people through an idea. That's what I got from teaching that I can actually turn into a marketable skill. And
Mhm.
it's why when I started doing my workshops, I realized this is the way that I want to, introduce people to me and to my content is through teaching, but it's not what I sell. I don't sell like how to make money on teachers pay teachers, even though that's something that I used to do as a teacher. It's a platform for teachers to sell each other learning stuff.
Mhm.
It's more like a skill in my tool chest because I was a teacher. I can, run an amazing workshop, but the marketable skill piece turned into something totally different
Mhm.
because I had all of those skills. I can manage a room full of people, no problem.
Yeah.
That's a skill that people don't realize is a marketable,
Mm-hmm.
sellable skill. Not everybody can do that. And I'm sure you come across lots of people who don't realize the genius that they have just because it's so normal and everyday to them.
Yeah, you have to point it out many, many times. Like, okay, no, what
Hmm.
you're talking about right now is what people want to pay for. Oh, but I do that
Right.
naturally. I'm like, exactly. Whatever you do naturally, easily, whatever comes to you as like just a natural, that's what people pay for, is what comes
Hmm.
easy to you doesn't come easy to them.
Yeah.
So you're going to give them the shortcut to make it easy or to get to that result. And people, yeah, they discount it all the time when that's the gold right there, is
Yeah.
whatever's the easiest, whatever's the smoothest, whatever you have the most experience and expertise in. So I love that I pointed that out, because yeah, that's where the money is, that's where the growth is, as a business, for
Yeah.
sure.
I like to pose the question, what if it was allowed to be fun?
Yeah, right.
And so and sometimes people are like, "Oh, it's allowed to be fun?"
Right, right. You're giving
Like,
them
what if it's allowed to be
permission.
easy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so talk to me a little bit about, how does somebody sort of like, okay, cool, I want to follow the fun. What
Mhm.
the heck? I mean, because I was thinking about this earlier too, before we got on air. We're also, I think, as adults, like we have trouble playing with our kids. We have trouble like going out and having fun that maybe is not like going to the bars or whatever it is for you. Like
Mhm.
sometimes we have to relearn how to have fun in just our general life.
Yeah.
How do we learn, or how do we teach ourselves, or how do we start taking steps towards following the fun, especially in our business?
Oh man, I love that. I identify as a creative, but I struggle sometimes giving myself space to just play in my creativity
Mm-hmm.
where it doesn't have to have a purpose. And I think
Yes.
sometimes in
Mm-hmm.
our businesses, it feels like everything has to have a purpose to
Mm-hmm.
be worth our time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't often make time to play in our businesses. I do think for somebody who is, supporting, they're putting food on their table, they're supporting themselves, their family members, maybe even extended family members, having what I call like a bread and butter offer in place gives us the space to play more in our businesses. So, like when you know that your basic business revenue needs are taken care of, then you can play more. But I think there's also the idea that like play can be our work, and looking for those opportunities that spark joy and like spontaneity. I think I read a book recently, and they recommended a an inventory of like how you're spending your time, but the way to process that was like how engaged you were in it and how much of a flow state you were while you were doing that. And I think sometimes that can be play for adults, is like finding that flow state piece. So when we talk about businesses, I try and stay in activities that are in that flow state for me, and then like delegate the rest. But I think to answer your question, as far as like as our whole person and our whole selves, it's that permission to do something for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't have to make a quilt with my fabric stash. I could just like play putting fabric together and see what happens, and like getting out of that mentality. I think this is kind of a societal thing that we've taken on, that
Yeah.
everything we do has to have some sort of purpose or productivity
Right.
as part of it.
I tell my wife all the time. So I garden, I vegetable garden, but I'm
Hmm.
like
I do too.
I'm awful at it. Like, yeah, I just love doing it, even though like the fruits of my labor are not. We definitely couldn't feed our family on it. We moved out to 6 acres just so we could so I could do some homesteading. But with the
Yeah.
understanding that I'm probably not a person who would ever be actually self-sufficient, because I just play at it. But I have
Hmm.
fun. If I'm in a bad mood, I go out and I play in the dirt. Maybe that thing will feed me later and give me something. Maybe it won't. But it drives my wife nuts, because she doesn't understand that something can just be about doing it. and
Hmm.
not the end result, or not, it doesn't have to have an ending.
Yeah.
It just can
I,
be. And that,
I love
that can
that.
be,
Yeah.
hard for a lot of adults, because we're constantly driven to have the end result and to get to where we're
Hmm.
supposed to be getting, to finish out a project, or to, to check that box, or to, close something out, or to be successful. And sometimes you just need to do it, even if it has
Yeah.
nowhere to go. You have nowhere to take it.
Yeah, I love that. I love to garden too. I
Yeah.
successfully grew an eggplant for the first time this year.
I've not grown an eggplant yet.
I felt so proud. I was like, "You're three, third time's a charm. I have an eggplant."
That's amazing.
Yes.
I can
Yeah.
barely even get like tomato. I'm really good at like Swiss chard and kale and greens. I
Hmm.
got that down. As I don't have to do anything. I just
Yeah.
like plant it and it's done. Anything that
You know, the
requires care.
the best, I know this is a tangent, but the
Yeah.
best easy to grow vegetable is garlic. You literally stick it in the ground
Yes.
and then you get to dig it up and it's like a whole, it's magic. Gardening is magic,
Yes.
people. But
Yes.
yeah, if you know, you know.
Yes, exactly. Just it's fun to do. I love it.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit, Audra, how can people follow you, find you, get involved in the fun that you're that you're
Yeah.
putting off out into the world? I love kind of everything that you do. How can people come get connected with you?
Yeah, I love to connect with people in several places. So I actually just hit publish on a page on my website that has some freebies on it. I have a money mindset reset that I think is really powerful. It's actually a very small product. It's just 3 parts, including a money meditation to kind of rewire some of our thoughts about money. I think especially as women, there can be a lot of stuff that we carry, and that stuff can hold us back in our businesses. I also on that page have a check-in, and I provide feedback to everyone who completes the check-in. So if you're thinking, there's something in my business that's not feeling so fun, I wish I could get a little bit of insight from Audra on that. You can.
Yeah.
So the URL for that is actually, I have a slide. Can I just
Oh yes,
skip
absolutely.
forward into that? Yeah. So here we
You can go ahead.
go. Here we go. Okay, there we go. So it's a brand new page. It's got the self-guided check-in and feedback, and the money mindset reset. SheLivesHerBiz.com/start here. The Follow the Fun workshops you can find on my website, but they're also directly at SheLivesHerBiz.com/FTF workshop. Um, I would love to put a little plug here. My workshops only cost $7, and that $7 gets donated to a worthy cause every month. And so we like to support causes that are in alignment with my values, and also the values of my guests. So the National Women's Law Center is one of our favorites, and also Kiva Loans for women entrepreneurs, not just in the US, but globally. And I am forming biz circles for 2023. And what that looks like is masterminding, one-to-one coaching, and also agency services. I have a design and tech agency if you're doing branding, websites, or email service provider tech. So it's kind of a mixture of all of those. It's finding that community that's going to uplift you and be along on your journey. So if anyone's interested in that, you can DM me on the socials or email me. All that information is there on the slide. I love to hear from people, even if you don't want to work with me, but you're like, "Hi, Audra." I'm like, "Hi."
I love that. And tell me a little bit, because this is kind of a semi off topic, but you talked about in the funnel-meter, that connection piece, and how
Mhm.
kind of worked on this mastermind the last couple years. We're at She's in Business for the new year are really going to be taking a lot of focus, or placing a lot of focus into like networking, referral building, that sort of thing,
Mhm.
for the community as a whole. But I'm interested to hear a little bit about how how you formed that mastermind, how you picked out kind of the people that you wanted to be kind of in community with in your own
Yeah.
life, because I think that that's really cool that you just kind of like you guys sourced this mastermind, you've been supporting one another, and you've become so ingrained in each other's lives and businesses. Can you, off topic, but can you tell us a little bit about how that has impacted your life and how that came about?
Yeah, so I had never heard of masterminding, or maybe I had heard the term, but I wasn't sure. It was like kind of sounded weird. There's like hot seats and like what does that mean and
Yeah.
all these things. And I was part of a group, and they were like, "Hey, do we want to start some masterminds?" And so somebody in that group kind of helped match people. But then that program ended, and the mastermind decided to continue meeting. And over the years, it's shifted a little bit. You know, people have left because maybe they shifted focus in their business, et cetera. So that's like the mastermind that I've had for 3 years, where we were kind of all brought together. We were all interested in financial independence and entrepreneurship. And so, yeah, we really gelled. The mastermind that I started for Follow the Fun, it was my clients and my biz friends that I thought would be up for the experiment. And I knew, would be kind of interested in that. Idea of like, we're not going to form a mastermind to like make 10K in the next month. We're not going to form a mastermind for that hustle piece. It's going to be more about like figuring out what does it mean to follow the fun. And I have to say, one of the people in that mastermind was Liz Wilcox. If you've heard of her, she's an email marketer. And from that question and that idea, she launched her $9 monthly membership, which is now very successful, helping lots of people connect to their clients through email. And I'm so proud to have been a little piece of that journey, because as a group, we really looked at like, what does it mean to follow the fun? And lots of cool things came out of it. So I think when I consider forming groups and making those business connections, I've been on a lot of calls where it's like let's become referral partners. But what's missing about that, I think, is the deeper relationship that allows you to really understand, who should I be sending this person's way? What are they about? Is their ideal client enough similar to my ideal client where maybe we're talking to the same types of people? I really don't like the kind of speed dating networking that I've been a part of in the past, and really left feeling like I wanted something more. But I'm also an introvert who values deep connections.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it works really well for some people, but not so much
Yeah.
for me.
Well, it's like you said, earlier, there's like no really one way to do it right. And like you don't have
Mm-hmm.
to follow what any one person says. You have to do what feels in alignment for you. And if it's
Yeah.
speed networking, if it's group networking, if it's just one-on-one coffee chats, like there's no
Yeah.
one wrong way as long as you're in alignment with how you're feeling. And you got to try it. You find out, hey, that's not for me. That's why I
Right.
just love about online business so much, because there's really no rules. If you're willing
Right.
to follow the fun, follow that kind of that feel of hey, this is the cuddly monster my business is, instead of the the big scary
Right.
monster, then it's going to be okay and you're going to get there.
Right.
So I loved so much of this. This was so insightful and so great. I hope that you'll come back and talk to us more in the future about following the
I would
fun.
love to. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
love to.
Great. And everybody, thanks so much for tuning in today to She's in Business Live. Audra was so great. We're going to leave all of her info in the comments and show notes so that you can go follow her, you can connect with her, and you can go follow the fun that she's following as well. And we will see you guys on the next one. Thanks for tuning in to She's in Business. If you would like to try out our She's in Business platform or be a part of our 2023 networking community, go check out she'sinbusiness.org. We will see you on the next one.